Imagine paying for your house, your driveway, your piece, and then your HOA tells you to be neighborly and hand your motorcycle to Karen's teenage son. What would you do if a board used the word courtesy, like a crowbar, to pry open your garage? It kicked off on a warm Saturday, where the whole street smelled like cut grass and hose water. I was on my porch with coffee, watching the sprinklers arc little rainbows over the lawn, when this kid, I'd only seen once or twice, 16, maybe, strolled straight into my driveway and planted himself in front of my Harley. No knock. No hello. He just jabbed his chin at the chrome like he was picking a donut. Mom said, "You're giving me this one." I actually laughed. Thought it was a joke you tell at a barbecue. He didn't laugh. He slid a folded paper out of his pocket and read, slow and proud, like he was announcing the weather. Community donation motorcycle, approved by the board. He nodded toward the cul-de-sac. And there she stood, Karen. Sunglasses, clipboard, arms folded like an eagle on a flag. She gave me the kind of wave a pageant queen gives when she knows the trophy's already hers. "Morning," she called. "Let's make this easy." I set my mug down. "Come again, your motorbike," she said. Sweet as lemonade. The board agreed it's an eyesore and a noise concern. The neighborly solution is to donate it to a resident family who will appreciate it properly. My son turns 17 next month. Perfect timing. "Ma'am," I said, "that is not happening." Her smile didn't move. Just her sunglasses tilted, catching the sun. "Then we'll escalate. Now." I ain't the kind to back down 'cause someone says a fancy word with a clipped tone. But I also ain't trying to pick a fight at 10 in the morning on a Saturday. "There's no universe," I said, "where this bike leaves my driveway unless I'm on it." The kid huffed, like I'd stolen his birthday. Karen touched his shoulder and steered him off my lawn as if it were hers to steer. They retreated to their nest at the corner, whispering like stage villains. I picked up my mug. I figured, okay, weird moment over. It wasn't. By Tuesday, 3 long days of silence that felt like a cough building, I had a notice taped to my door. Courtesy compliance reminder, it said, in that syrupy HOA font that makes threats look like wedding invites. It accused my Harley of visual disharmony, excessive decibel output at socially sensitive hours, and something called refusal to participate in the community donation program. The part that made me snort was a line in italics. Do the right thing voluntarily and avoid formal action. I took a breath, counted to 10. Then I did what you do when your piece is being measured by a person with a clipboard. I gathered facts. Title, registration, service records, every scrap of paper that said this machine was mine. Paid in full. Loved and lawful. I even pulled the doorbell clip from Saturday morning. There was the kid, plain as day, saying the quiet part out loud. Mom said, "You're giving me this one." I sent a calm email to the board subject line regarding the donation letter, attaching the title and the clip, and asking, politely, to see the bylaw that mentioned any donation program for private property. I CC'd my neighbor on the corner, Bill, who'd mentioned once he was the board president. I kept it short, respectful, you know, grown up. By dinner, I had a reply, not from Bill, from Karen. She addressed me as Dear Resident. She said the program was established last fall and ratified by the board. She included a screenshot of Resolution 7. A paragraph blurry enough to be slippery. It said, In essence, items that cause disharmony could be reassigned to appropriate homes as donations to foster goodwill. There was no letterhead, no signature, no date. I wrote back, "Please provide the signed resolution, the date it passed, and the section of the bylaws it modifies. Also, please schedule this for the next open meeting." Her answer came quick. "We'll escalate." I wish I could tell you I slept fine that night, but I felt it like a low hum in the studs of the house. Control, disguised as kindness. Power, dressed as neighborliness. You could smell it, even with the windows shut. 2 mornings later, I rolled the Harley out for a quick spin. Sun low, road clean. That engine note, steady, warm. Like a big cat waking up. I was barely back. Helmet still on. When 2 patrol cars eased into my driveway. Lights. No siren. One officer stepped out like his boots had done this 100 times. "Sir, please step away from the motorcycle." Excuse me, we got a report of stolen property." My stomach did a neat little backflip. "This is my bike," I said, calm as I could. "Title's inside." Karen drifted into frame from the sidewalk, the kid hovering behind her like an echo. She pointed with 2 fingers. "Delicate as a ballerina. That's the one. He promised it to my son and reneged. That's fraud." Right. The officer looked like he wanted a different call. Still, he asked for proof. I nodded, opened the front door, and invited them to the kitchen. Title on the countertop. Registration. Insurance. I even handed them a photo from the day I bought it. Me and the previous owner under an old oak at a farm sale. The bike shining like a new dime. They checked the VIN. They radioed in. They sighed the sigh of men who'd been fed a story that didn't survive daylight. "It's his," one said. Then he added, politely but firmly, "Ma'am, please don't use emergency services to settle civil disputes." Karen clasped her hands. "Of course, officer. I was only trying to protect a minor." They left. I watched the cruisers roll away. Coffee gone cold in my hand. And for a second, I did something I ain't proud of. I doubted myself. Maybe I should just keep the bike in the garage. Maybe I should sell it. Maybe it isn't worth the headache. That's what bullies count on. Not your fear. Your fatigue. I texted Bill. "We need to talk at the next meeting." He answered with a single line that told me everything. "Please bring everything." I spent that weekend building a paper bulldozer. Not just titles and screenshots and the doorbell clip. I printed the full bylaws. I highlighted sections about property rights, noise standards, due process. I called my buddy Mark, a quiet man with a calm voice who works at the state attorney's office, and asked, hypothetically, what to do if a homeowners association tried to reassign a private vehicle. He gave me the kind of answer that isn't legal advice, but sure sounds like common sense. Document everything. Don't argue in the yard. Speak where there are minutes. While I printed and stapled and tabbed, neighbors wandered by. People I'd only ever waved to from across the street. A retired teacher named Miss Lopez brought brownies and a story about the time Karen measured her flag bracket with a tape measure and wrote her up for being an inch off aesthetic symmetry. A young family down the block, the Parkers, told me about a noise complaint that turned out to be their son's laughter when a sprinkler popped. A veteran named Jamal showed me a picture of his therapy dog. A good old boy with gray in his muzzle. And the warning they got for non-conforming vest color. It was like a fog lifted. I wasn't the first. I was just the first to get a demand to donate something big enough to put on a poster. At the open meeting, the folding chairs filled up early. The fluorescent lights hummed. A dozen little paper nameplates decorated the long table board members, trying to look official under plastic plants. Bill tapped the gavel. Looking like a man who slept on a couch. New business, he said. Starts with the motorcycle item. Karen rose like a curtain. Smile lacquered on. I believe we've all heard the rumor mill. She began. Voice a little too bright. The community donation policy exists for harmony. Mr. Owens declined to participate and has been very hostile about it. He frightened my son. She placed a hand to her heart. We're a family neighborhood. Bill rubbed the bridge of his nose. Do you have the signed resolution? Karen, she clicked her tablet. It's in the minutes. Show it. She lifted the screen so the front row could see the blurry paragraph again. Some heads nodded. Then squinted. Then stopped nodding. This is a screenshot. Bill said. From what meeting? Last fall. She said. Breezy. The board ratified it unanimously. Who was present? Everyone. She smiled wider. Who signed it? It's well, the minutes are the signature. I stood. Cleared my throat. If I may. Bill gestured. Go ahead. Mr. Owens. I kept my voice like a steady engine at idle. I'm not here to yell. I said. I'm here to ask for clarity and for the board to protect the rights you promised when we bought into this neighborhood. I laid a folder on the table and slid out the first tab. Title and registration. I said. Handing copies to Bill and to the secretary. A still from the doorbell cam where a minor, prompted by his mother, states, I'm giving him my motorcycle. A police report confirming the vehicle is mine and no crime occurred. Murmurs. A few eyebrows went north. Next tab. Here's the bylaws. Section on property rights. There's no such thing as a community donation for private titled property. There is a process for nuisance abatement, which requires notice, inspection, and an actual basis. If my bike is too loud, show me the decibel reading, the time of day, and the device used. I set down a small orange meter. This is a decibel reader. I parked at the approved setback and documented every startup last month. The highest reading was well below the threshold. And never during restricted hours. Someone in the back, Jamal, let out a low. Satisfied, Next tab. Here's every set of minutes from last fall. Printed from the board's own drive. I highlighted motions and votes. There is no Resolution 7. There is a paragraph in an email draft that looks like the screenshot you showed. It was proposed in a subcommittee. Never introduced at a regular meeting. And never signed. I paused. Let the paper do the talking. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize tonight. If I'm right, I want the record to show that a board member created the appearance of a policy that doesn't exist and used it to pressure a neighbor to surrender personal property. For a beat. The room was a church. Then Miss Lopez, God bless her, said, Amen. Bill's jaw worked. He looked at the secretary, who flipped through minutes with the panic of a librarian whose shelf fell over. She shook her head. Tiny. Once. Bill tapped his gavel too hard and made the water cups jump. Karen, he said. Stern now. This policy was never adopted. Karen lifted her chin. It was the spirit of the community. Spirit isn't a bylaw. Bill said. The board does not reassign private property. Period. You could feel something unclench in that room. A dozen shoulders dropped. A couple neighbors slumped like balloons exhaling. Karen tried a new path. Well, he threatened my son. I held up both hands. No. Ma'am. I told him no. I told him to step off my property. The only raised voice was yours when you told the officers I'd stolen my own bike. Bill nodded toward the secretary, who typed like the piano player in an old saloon. Noted, he said. Then he looked at me. Mr. Owens, we're going to rescind any courtesy notices you received. I'm also calling for an internal review of recent complaints and the process by which they were filed. Karen's smile frayed. This is a witch hunt. It's accountability, Bill said. And it was the first time I'd heard steel in his voice. I sat down, hands a little shaky. Relief will do that to you. Jamal tapped my shoulder and whispered, nice and steady. Man, Miss. Lopez slid me a brownie wrapped in foil like a medal. I wish I could tell you that was the end. It wasn't. 2 days later, a letter arrived on real law firm paper, heavy, creamy, expensive. It said I had emotionally misled a minor, caused distress, and should resolve the matter by transferring the motorcycle as restitution. It was signed by an attorney whose website featured a lot of smiling stock photos and a motto about making wrongs right. I called Mark. Read him the letter. He exhaled slowly, one of those lawyer breaths that says, this again. Sounds like a bluff, he said. And a sloppy one. But don't ignore it. Respond through counsel. Attach your evidence. And put them on notice to preserve their communications. I ain't rich, but I know when to spend money. I hired a steady-handed local lawyer named Dana, calm voice, kind eyes, a desk neat enough to earn trust on sight. She wrote a concise letter with the tone of a polite thunderstorm, no heat. All power. She included the title, the police confirmation, the bylaws, the minutes or lack of them, and the doorbell transcript. She asked the firm to identify the legal authority by which a private titled vehicle could be reassigned. She also asked for the names of board members who supposedly ratified the policy and the date on which the meeting occurred. She CC'd Bill, delicately. The state attorney's office. Not a threat. Just a light turned on. The letter had an effect. The law firm sent a clarification that read like someone hitting reverse without checking their mirrors. They said they understood the emotions involved and suggested an amicable resolution in which I made a charitable gesture to close the matter with dignity. Dana thanked him and attached an invoice for her time, noting they'd unnecessarily escalated a neighbor dispute. That's when the silence began. The good kind. No more letters. No more clipboard waves across the lawn. Just the normal sounds of a neighborhood trying to be normal again. But there was one more hill to climb. It started with a knock on my door the next Sunday. 3 neighbors, Miss Lopez, Jamal, and the Parkers stood on my porch with a petition. They'd collected signatures calling for a special meeting to remove Karen from her committee and review her recent complaints. They didn't ask me to lead anything. They asked me to bring copies of the very same facts I'd already printed. You're steady, Miss Lopez said. Folks trust steady. At the special meeting, people who'd never spoken into a microphone told small stories that added up to a big one. Paint swatches rejected for undertones. Holiday lights measured in inches. A granddad scolded over a wooden swing he built with his granddaughter. A service dog's vest color deemed too bright for a restful streetscape. It wasn't evil. It was control. Dressed nice and smiling. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Bill called the vote. The boardroom felt like a heartbeat held in a fist. The tally read out slow by the secretary removed Karen from her enforcement role and tasked a new committee with rewriting the fines and complaints process so it couldn't be used like a spear. No gloating. No cheering. Just the heavy, grateful exhale of people who'd been waiting to breathe. Afterward, out in the parking lot, the teenage boy hovered by the hydrangeas. He had that look kids get when adults drag them into things bigger than they are. He shuffled up, eyes on his sneakers. Hey, he said. Sorry about everything. I wanted a bike. I get it. I said. Wants are loud when you're young. He nodded. I shouldn't have said you promised. It happens. I said. Next time. Ask, don't announce. He half smiled, then ducked away. I ain't saying we became friends. I'm saying we both stepped out of a shadow. A week later, the board mailed a plain envelope, no fancy letterhead. No italics. It said the courtesy donation idea was never adopted and would never be considered again. It said my violation notices were void. It included a new draft rule that required real evidence for noise complaints, decibel readings, dates, devices, and a clear path to appeal that didn't run through one person's clipboard. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. These days, my Harley sleeps under a cover, the exact neutral shade the HOA approves, because I read the book they gave me. And I follow it where it's fair. On early mornings, I roll out to the edge of the driveway and thumb the starter with the quiet confidence of a man who knows his rights and minds his neighbors. I keep a decibel log habit, now. Like checking the oil, I wave at folks walking dogs. Some wave back with that little extra shoulder that says, "Thank you for standing up without shouting." And I learned something. I wish I hadn't had to learn. Bullies don't always shout. Sometimes they speak in soft fonts and say courtesy a lot. They hand you a reminder and call it kindness. They ask for what isn't theirs and call it harmony. The trick isn't to learn to shout louder. It's to learn to hold still. To ask for the bylaw page number. To bring the minutes. To do your homework and let the paper do the heavy lifting. I ain't a lawyer. I ain't a crusader. I'm a guy who likes his porch coffee, his good neighbors, and a motorcycle that starts on the first try. But if someone tells you to donate your property to make the block prettier, ask for the vote count. Ask for the signatures. Ask for the date. If those don't show up, don't give up your keys. Stand easy. Speak steady. Invite the sunlight in. So, yeah, what would you do if your HOA tried to reassign your stuff in the name of harmony? Anyone else had a board threaten you with a fake policy or a courtesy that felt like a shove? Drop your story below. I'm, real curious how you'd handle a Karen like this. You're gonna want to be careful. Jamal told me one afternoon while we were both trimming hedges along the shared fence. Power don't vanish. It just looks for a new handle. He was right. After Karen lost her committee slot, the neighborhood had a month of quiet, so thick you could hear sprinklers ticking like metronomes. Then the rumors started, anonymous complaints that didn't come with a knock on the door. Little piles of gravel left at the end of driveways. A 3-paragraph email about trash can lid etiquette that could have been a poem if it didn't scold so hard. The signature on the email read, Harmony Champions. It smelled like Karen with a wig on. Bill looked older by the next board meeting. Dark half-moons under his eyes. Shirt wrinkled like a map. He called the session to order with a gavel that sounded, honestly, tired. New business, he said, begins with a community conversation on process. I stood to the side with Jamal and Miss Lopez and the Parkers. Our little loose-knit group had grown by a handful, a nurse named Carla, a roofer named Dominic, a widower named Mr. Hart with a voice like a cello. We didn't have a name. We didn't want one. We had a habit show up calm with paper. Karen sat in the back row, arms folded. Not speaking, her sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She forgot to take off. She wasn't on the dais anymore, but her shadow still was. You know that feeling when a storm cloud sticks around after the rain. That. Bill put a slide on the little projector. Proposed complaint process. It said, bullet points, timelines, requirements. It looked fair. Decibel readings had to include date, device, and distance. Photos of eyesores had to show a measuring tape or a standard reference. Complaints had to be signed, no more anonymous sniping. And the target of the complaint had to be given a copy within 2 days. Not 2 months later, when fines stacked up like leaves, the room buzzed. People aren't used to being treated like adults by a board. It felt good. Then, from the back, a voice drifted out like a cold draft. What about courtesy? What about the culture of the neighborhood, Karen? Soft voice. Sharp edges. Bill didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the slide. Courtesy is a choice, he said. Not a rule. Somebody clapped. Then somebody else. It fizzled quick. Nobody wanted a pep rally. But the air moved. Even Karen felt it. She sank half an inch in her chair. We voted to adopt the process. The room felt heavier with fairness in it. Not perfect. Not enshrined in gold. But a step. After the meeting, Bill cornered me by the coffee urn. Can I be candid? Please. I'm tired, he said. And I'm sorry. I should have reined it in months ago. I shook my head. You're reigning now. That counts. He rubbed his face. There's a stack of old complaints we have to unwind. If we do nothing, people get stuck with unfair fines. If we do too much, we look like we're throwing the whole rule book out. Folks on both sides will yell. Then set a deadline. I said, surprising myself. Announce an amnesty period. Wipe everything that can't be proven under the new process. He blinked. That's actually reasonable. Don't tell anyone I said something reasonable, I said. And he managed a laugh. The amnesty announcement went out on a Tuesday in a plain email with no italics. It said, bring your complaints. Bring your fines. Bring your photos. If there's no decibel reading, no measurement, no signature, we'll wipe it. If there is, we'll work it out like neighbors. The room the next Saturday looked like a yard sale of grudges folders. Envelopes. A broken tape measure. Screenshots of text threads. People who hadn't spoken in months stood shoulder to shoulder in line. Some apologized to each other in whispers. Some glared. But most just wanted to put down a weight. I sat in the corner at a folding table and helped copy titles and dates in neat stacks. Jamal checked ID numbers. Miss Lopez gave out cookies because she's a saint. Karen came. Too late. Alone. Eyes flat, with something like hunger. She placed a thin folder on the table. Inside were 3 complaints she'd filed under different neighbor names. All the same font. All the same phrasing. All the same wrong. Bill flagged them silently and slid them to a separate pile. He didn't gloat. He didn't scold. He just did the work of a person who had decided, finally, to be the adult in the room. By afternoon, the board had wiped a dozen unfair fines and reset a dozen more into actual conversations. The neighborhood felt lighter. The sun even looked different. Or maybe that was just relief. That night, I wheeled the Harley out for a dusk loop. I kept it soft, like always. At the stop sign, the teenage boy Karen's kid rolled by on a bicycle with squeaky brakes. He glanced over. Hey, he said, not quite looking at me. Hey, I said. Nice bike, he said. Thanks, I said, and lifted a hand. He pushed off and rode away. Sometimes, the best truce is just not throwing rocks. A few days later, I found a small note on my porch. No letterhead, no italics, just handwriting that leaned a little to the left. I'm stepping back for a while. It said, consider me an ordinary neighbor. No signature. But it didn't need one. I wish that were the last page of the story. It ain't. The reason is, simple rules attract people who like to hold them up. Sometimes, like a mirror. Sometimes like a shield. Sometimes like a spear. When one person sets the spear down, someone else picks it up, if only to see how it feels in their hand. That Harmony Champions email list popped up again. This time, asking for volunteers to assist with visual coherence audits. It made my molars itch. But instead of getting mad, I got curious. Who were these champions? Why were they anonymous? I sent a polite reply asking for names, roles, and the bylaw that created the group. The answer was a block of sugar. We're an informal coalition. We love our street. Jamal texted me. Informal coalition is 2 words for a mask. We didn't need another fight. We needed sorry. I'm gonna sound corny culture. The real kind. The kind that doesn't come with clipboards. So we organized something nobody could complain about without sounding like a cartoon, a Saturday work and wave. Folks put out yard tools and coffee and helped whoever needed a hand. No rules. No sign-ups. Just people with hedge trimmers and paintbrushes and casseroles. I tuned up a neighbor's mower. Miss Lopez taught a teen how to edge a walkway without scalping the grass. Jamal rehung a crooked shutter with a level and a smile. Someone set a portable speaker on low and played old soul records. If you wanted to talk bylaws, you could, but most people talked about dogs and recipes and weather, and that one time a thunderstorm knocked the mailbox down. Karen walked by twice. The first time she kept going. The second time she paused at the curb like a tourist at a museum door. You need anything, I asked. Because I am stubborn about hospitality. She shook her head. Then she said, soft. Looks good. And moved on. It wasn't a conversion. It was a crack in the wall where light got in. Here's what I learned that summer: a board can change rules, but a block changes itself. You can shrink the shadow of a clipboard with sunshine and cookies and a level used by a neighbor who likes you enough to show up. You don't win by humiliating the person who wanted your motorcycle. You win by making it clear, calm, steady, boringly clear, that nobody gets to take something that's yours. And that courtesy is what we give each other, not what a form demands. And when I say win, I don't mean trophies. I mean quiet mornings. I mean waves that last 1 second longer than they used to. I mean a teenage boy who says hey without flinching. I mean a street where the loudest sound some days is a sprinkler trying to be a metronome. So yeah, if your HOA ever tries to reassign your property or invent a policy out of thin air, don't yell in the yard. Don't storm the Facebook page. Ask for the page number. Ask for the vote. Bring the minutes. Bring cookies. And when they say, we'll escalate, answer with, we'll meet. Then, meet. Then, keep meeting until the word courtesy means what it's supposed to mean. What would you do here? Anyone else had a resolution waved in your face that, mysteriously never existed? Tell me your story. I'm listening, and, I mean, I'm probably gonna steal your best lines for the next meeting. 3 weeks after the amnesty, the board did something brave. They posted every future agenda with links to the drafts. and they put a small sign at the clubhouse that read, "Bring your questions. We'll bring the page number." It was shockingly undramatic. People showed up with coffee, not pitchforks. And it worked, 'cause most of us don't want to fight. We want to say. One agenda item, though, made me cough my coffee. Vehicle storage clarification. My stomach did that old backflip, not as high, but enough to get my attention. I took a breath. Then I did the thing I promised myself I'd do. I didn't freak out in the driveway. I emailed Bill and asked for the draft language. He sent it within an hour. No surprises. He wrote, the draft said street parking overnight was discouraged, not banned, and driveways were permitted for titled vehicles. It allowed covers in a set of neutral colors. It required that vehicles be operable, which, honestly, is fair. It also included a clause I loved. No policy shall be construed to require the transfer, reassignment, or donation of privately titled property. I smiled at that one. It's nice when the thing you fought becomes a line in a book other folks can use. At the meeting, a younger guy named Chris raised his hand. I'm new, he said. Cheeks a little pink. And I work nights. Sometimes I pull in after midnight. Am I gonna get a letter for starting my car late? Nope. Bill said, just be reasonable. If someone complains, we'll ask them for a decibel reading, not a diary entry. Karen shifted in her seat. She hadn't said much lately. She looked smaller without the gavel sunlight on her face. But she was still there. And that matters because a neighborhood ain't a movie where villains vanish. People stay. They soften. Or they harden. Or they learn. Or they lie low and wait. And you keep showing up either way. After the vote, which passed, Chris caught me by the water cooler. You're the motorcycle guy. Right. Guilty. My uncle left me a classic, he said. Eyes lighting up. I'm trying to get it running. Bring it to my driveway Saturday, I said. We'll coax it back. He grinned. For real, yeah, I said. Bring donuts. Saturday came. He brought donuts. We laid out tools on a moving blanket. The sun climbed slow. The engine coughed. Then sneezed. Then cleared its throat like a choir boy. When it finally caught, the street did something I never expected. It clapped. Not loud. Not staged. Just a spatter of happy palms from porches and sidewalks, like a little orchestra warming up. Even Karen, sitting under her maple tree with a magazine, lifted her hands twice. I pretended not to see. She pretended not to be seen. That's called a truce. That night, I wrote myself a note I keep taped inside the cabinet with the oil filters. Stand steady. Ask for the page number. Keep your hands open. It's corny. It's mine. Every story needs a last bump. And ours came courtesy of a postcard. No return address. A picture of a lighthouse. On the back, block letters. If you cared about harmony, you'd have given the bike. I felt the old heat rise. Then I breathed. Counted. Smiled. I took a photo of the card and texted Bill heads up. Anonymous mail is back. He replied documented. Trash it. So I did. And the world did not end. The sun rose. The sprinklers ticked. The teenage boy rode by and said hey again, with a little lift in his voice like he meant it this time. Maybe that's all the victory you get in real life. A postcard you throw away. A neighbor who softens. A sentence in a bylaw that stops someone someday from trying what they tried on you. It's enough. If you're listening to this thinking, man, I ain't got time for meetings and minutes. I hear you. But pick one moment to stand steady. One email that says, show me the vote. One meeting where you bring cookies and decibel data. Courtesy is contagious. So is calm. And if anyone asks for your keys in the name of harmony, smile. Say no. And ask for the page number. Anyway, your turn. What's the wildest policy someone waved at you that turned to dust when you read it out loud? Anyone else had a Karen who tried to invent a rule and call it culture? Drop it in the comments. I might learn a trick or two. Last thing I'll say. 'Cause I know I'm rambling, sorry. I do that when the coffee's good. I kept one copy of that fake Resolution 7 screenshot in a folder labeled Lessons. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Paper can be faked. And paper can save you. Screenshots lie. Minutes tell the truth. A gavel can scare you. A question can free you. Sometimes I take the Harley out right after sunrise. When the road's empty and the sky is a soft blue-gray. And I think about how close I came to rolling over, just to be done with the noise. I almost sold it to buy peace. But peace you buy with surrender tastes bitter forever. Peace you build with neighbors sticks to your ribs. The bike hums under me. Steady as a heart that's decided to beat on purpose. I pass Ms. Lopez's porch, she raises a mug. I pass Jamal's fence, he gives a little salute. I pass the Parker's yard sprinklers, ticking like a band of tiny drummers. I pass Karen's driveway. She's often out there now, clipping roses with careful hands. Sometimes she looks up, eyes steady. No sunglasses. Sometimes she nods. Sometimes I nod back. The best revenge, they say, is living well. I'd add, the best defense is reading well. So keep your papers. Keep your patience. Keep your porch coffee. Keep your keys. So tell me, what would you do if your HOA told you to donate your property for harmony? Anyone else ever watch a fake policy melt when you asked for the page number? Tell me everything. I'm listening. And, there's folks on my street who could use your playbook.